Greetings, YouTube visitors. Okay, today's Around the World news for March the 23rd is going to focus a little bit on the subject of employment or unemployment, however you want to look at it. So let's just get right into it. It's no wonder that so much of our angst is job related. Some people don't have jobs, all the while many others don't like the jobs they have. The millions of unemployed, underemployed, or unhappily employed touch all of us in some way. If our nation's work rate were back up to the start of the century high, well over 10 million Americans would currently have paying jobs. And that employment shortfall makes a real difference to the growth of the economy. There are only two ways to grow the economy. You either have to grow the number of people working, or you have to increase their productivity. If you remove 10 million American workers from the labor force, not only are they not producing anything, the vast majority of them are obviously consuming the fruits of the labor of those who are employed. The number of people dropping out of the labor force is increasing. Couple that trend with reduced productivity, and we will be lucky to see even 2% growth for the rest of the decade. If we have a recession, we will end up with a lower GDP than we have today. Think about that. And then plug it into federal budget projections. Meanwhile, employers feel a different kind of angst. Many either can't find qualified workers, or their workers require constant attention and extensive training to be productive. I have a friend of mine who lives in Florida who told me that he works by himself pretty much. He's a handyman. But he tells me that he can't find good workers, and that's probably true. It's hard to find good workers. People who show up on time, people who can do what's required of them. And in many cases, you have willing people, but you have to train them, and that costs money and time. And it's a big effort on the part of the employer, because today's young people haven't learned the discipline of work. Too many of our African Americans are actually coming from many generations of being on welfare. And so the young kids find it easier just to get on welfare like their mom did or their dad did. And what we need to do today is create jobs. Because I believe that if you start young and you teach your children the discipline of work, that if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. That you're going to have to provide for yourself someday. Don't even think about getting on government assistance, okay? That's what they want you to do. That's why our debt has doubled under Obama. We've had so many people lose their homes, lose their jobs and businesses, but now they're getting bailed out. Or maybe they're moving in with family, if they have family who are loving and caring and supportive, but so often today we don't have that. It's so easy to talk about getting a job, but very few people have those jobs available to them. There's a small number of people with the really high-paying jobs. You see, a lot of the jobs left this country years ago to China and India. All right, I digressed a little bit. Getting back. Where did I start? Meanwhile, employers feel a different kind of angst. Many either can't find qualified workers, or the workers require constant attention and extensive training to be productive. Neither side of the labor management divide is happy with the arrangements. Everybody is apprehensive about the future. The common complaint from businessmen is not that they need more capital and the ability to borrow money from banks, but that they need more good workers in order to attract more good customers. This widespread dissatisfaction among employers, employees, and those who aren't working is one big reason Donald Trump is now president. He paid attention to a large group of voters that others ignored, spoke to their anxieties, and won the White House. It was not simply working class white males that he appealed to. That is far too simplistic an analysis. It was also their bosses, spouses, parents, and friends. A huge swath of the country was experiencing a yawning disconnect between the reality of their daily lives and the supposedly growing economy touted by politicians and media pundits. We focus on the anxiety of the white working class male, but I challenge you to find me an identity group, however you want to define it, that isn't anxious and concerned that things aren't heading in the right direction. American culture used to be known for its optimism, its can-do spirit. That quality hasn't vanished, but it has surely lost some of its luster this century. You can see it fading in the statistics about the number of new business startups, which is now less than the number of businesses closing down. And that trend has been in place for almost a decade. The hope that the situation was temporary, probably let people tolerate much worse conditions than they should have. But you can only look on the bright side long before you get tired of waiting. The change in direction that began at about the turn of the century is described clearly in Nicholas Eberschon's biting essay in Commentary magazine entitled Our Miserable 21st Century. It is definitely the case that a smaller percentage of adult population is working now than in the present. The problem is particularly acute for men, though it affects women as well. Federal Reserve officials say the economy is near full employment. That notion is laughable to millions of regular Americans. Eberstadt estimates that for every unemployed American male between ages 25 and 55, there are 3 more who are neither working nor looking for work. Yeah, a lot of people have actually given up. And those people are not included on the government payroll or the government statistics of the unemployed. Like I said last night, in last night's report, according to John William of Shadow Stats, about 23 to 25% of the American working class are unemployed right now. Back in the 1930s, I think we had 25% unemployment during the Depression. And my argument is we're in a depression right now. Depression defined as a general overall decline in the standard of living. I've been to the neighborhoods. I do marketing. I can see all kinds of people going door to door because they don't have the money to do direct mail. It's cheaper to just go door to door. Put a door hanger out. If you're a realtor, you're going to put your business card out there or a brochure or something. I mean, people are hurting. There are homes that are being vacant right now. A lot of people are squatting in those homes. They break in the back windows or the doors, and they live there until a neighbor or somebody calls the police on them because they're trespassing, okay? There are homes that are vacant and abandoned, but you would never know it unless you see the grass growing a foot tall in the front yard or newspapers piling up on the sidewalk. People, it's time to wake up. Our government has not been your friend. You see, we've been keeping interest rates really low artificially for a long, long time. Now that Janet Yellen raised interest rates 0.25% under the pretended idea that the economy is getting stronger, but hasn't fully recovered yet. It hasn't recovered. That's true, but it's not getting stronger. It's not getting stronger. What we're in is depression and overall deflation. But there's coming a time, I believe, when we're going to see inflation pick up and possibly hyperinflation. That means food prices, energy prices, everything is going to increase, except for some of the bubbles that have been created because of the low interest rates, like housing and the stock market. Those are going to pop, and you're going to lose a lot of your wealth. So it's time to start saving what money you can. Get a job if you're unemployed. Start a small business if possible. Focus on that, okay? Don't depend on the government. If you're truly disabled, I understand that you can't work. There's a lot of people like that. But even then, you can work from home. Today it takes both men and women, husbands and wives, to make ends meet for the most part. This has been going on for the last 30 years. The time when the male was the primary breadwinner are gone, okay? The federal government has seen to that. As some of Aaron Russo, the late Aaron Russo's videos show, it was the Rockefellers' idea to fund the women's lib movement. By funding the women's lib movement, the liberation movement, you could get women working in the workforce, which would help destroy the family, because who's going to take care of the children, okay? And then you can also tax both men and women now. Instead of just taxing the husband's income, you tax the women or the husband and the wife's income. Genius plan, isn't it? Well, this started back around World War II when women started working in factories. And we just had a perpetual war machine. Washington is just a perpetual war machine. The globalists, they love war. The corporations are making their bombs and their guns and their missiles, and we're just butting in other nations' business that we have no business butting into. We need to take care of ourselves, Americans. Continuing. It is definitely the case that a smaller percentage of the adult population is working now than in the past. The problem is partly acute for men, though it affects women as well. Federal Reserve officials say the economy is near full employment. That notion is laughable to millions of regular Americans. I already covered that material. Let's see. The number of those males presently in the labor force is down almost 4% since 2000. That's about 5 million men who, for whatever reason, have dropped out of the labor force. Between 2000 and 2015, the total paid hours of work by all American workers rose 4%. The prior 15-year period saw a 35% increase in work hours. That's bad enough, but it gets worse. In the same 2000 to 2015 period, the adult civilian population grew almost 18%. With the population growing far faster than the total of work hours, it shouldn't be surprising that so many people aren't working. The downturn in labor force participation is a trend that has been going on among working age men for over 60 years. And recently, and somewhat alarmingly, we have seen the same negative trend in working age women. The participation rate for women doubled in the 50 years up till 2000. While for men it went down, or rather it went from about 90%, or 87.4% to be precise, to just below 70% today. And that fall-off has been steady throughout the entire period. You got to understand what's happening. Overall, Americans are getting poorer, not richer. Just ask yourself how you were doing 10 or 15 years ago compared to today. Most likely you're doing worse. You have less savings, you have less money, you may or may not be unemployed. You're hurting. You need to face that and get angry about it, okay? You know, the reason why we're becoming poor is because the piece of pie, let that represent the American economy, is getting smaller. And not only that, you got more people wanting a piece of the pie. So you got more people wanting a piece of the pie, but the pie is getting smaller. Of course, you're going to get less of that pie, which represents a smaller standard of living for each of us. It's common sense. Continuing, the progression from childhood to working adulthood used to be fairly standard. In an idealized form, which now seems almost mythological, it went something like this. You grow up seeing at least one parent go off to work every day. You know from an early age that this is normal and necessary to support the family. When you reach your preteens, you get a starter job of some kind. Paper route, mowing lawns, babysitting, etc. Maybe you get a regular job after school or in the summer. You finish high school and gain some independence from your parents by going to college or into the military. I did both. Or by getting a full-time job, which may involve learning a trade. And after a few years of saving your money, you're ready for marriage and the purchase of a starter home. Then you live happily ever after, the end. That sounds good, doesn't it? Well, people are waiting long to get married now. People are not able to work 40 hours and retire from their jobs anymore. Now, it's going to be like you work a job for 5 years, you get laid off or fired. Hopefully you get a job again and you work for another 3 years, you get laid off or fired. Then you try to get another job. You may have 5 to 10 jobs in your lifetime. I've had over 30 or 40. But that part of that is just my personality makeup. I've what I call experimented with various opportunities, employment situations, and I don't mind it at all. It's been a great experience, and I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And when I started my own business, I really had freedom, and the most pleasure in my life of any jobs I've ever had was when I started my own business. Because now, I'd had jobs, I didn't want another job, and I was able to be my own boss, set my own hours. I experienced a variety of work, never a boring day in my life, the kind of work I did, you know, and still do. I'm still working on marketing my business, but we're really in a downturn of the economy right now. So some services are more in demand than others. But I'm not using that as an excuse. Competition also has increased. Just have to be sharper, more mentally alert, work a little bit harder, a little bit smarter, do more of what works and less of what doesn't work, if you're a business owner. Continuing. That sequence, to the extent it ever existed, is pretty rare now. The majority of children grow up in broken homes. See parents hop from job to job with little satisfaction, and in some areas grow up surrounded by crime and welfare dependence. Overcoming that kind of start to get on a positive path is hard. People still understand that education is critical, but it's also more expensive than ever. Yeah, that's because the government's involved in education. They need to get out of education. Young adults take on student debt only to find the wonderful career they imagine isn't so easy to come by. Then there's a second category. These are people who may grow up in stable surroundings, make all the right moves, get a good education, and start a rewarding career only to run into a buzzsaw recession like we had in 2007 to 2010. They get laid off, burn through their savings, spend months or years looking for work, and eventually give up in despair. Then families break up. People move back in with parents. Addictions form and everything gets worse from there. And if such people do finally get another job, it comes with lower pay and fewer benefits. Let me digress a minute. I remember when I was moving to Hollywood in 1996 to pursue an acting career. Before that, I was in a play called Alone Together, put on by the Tokay Players in Lodi, California. And I played the part of Michael, an MIT professor, mathematical genius of sorts. It was a fun role that I played. And it was about these three kids. It was an off-Broadway play, Alone Together. Look it up. Anyway, can't remember the playwright, but it was a wonderful production. Harry Stoner is the guy that directed it. I remember his name. And because I think I was in a play with him in Delta College, my junior college years. But anyway, Harry directed this great play, and it's about these three kids who are living during the recession back in 1981, although the play setting was in 1996. And I was a little older than my years, but I played a younger person because I look younger than my age. But it was fun. It was about these three kids who the parents couldn't get rid of them. They moved back in with their parents. And the parents were just pulling their hair out, trying to get their kids out of the house. And me, playing Michael, I was the last to leave. So it was fun. And but you know, that's reality. I think the audience could connect with it. They could, if that play were performed today, they could connect with it today too. It's just as relevant today because of our economy. So what this is saying, this author here, is that the second category of people, they grew up in a normal environment, a normal home, having their mom and dad, unlike me. They got a good education, unlike me. They went to college. They got a good job, unlike me. But then they got laid off. The economy went down. They burned through their savings. Maybe they lost their home. They spent months looking, or years looking for work, and eventually gave up in despair. You see, it's easy to say, get a job and support your spouse. Good advice. But how to perform that which we should do is more difficult. It's easier said than done. A short but electrifying 2015 paper by Ann Case and Nobel Economics laureate Angus Deaton talked about a mortality trend that had gone almost unnoticed until then. Rising death rates for middle-aged U.S. whites. By Case and Deaton's reckoning, death rates rose somewhat slightly over 1999 to 2013 period for all non-Hispanic white men and women 45 to 54 years of age. But they rose sharply for those with high school degrees or less. And for this less educated grouping, most of the rise in death rates was accounted for by suicides, chronic liver cirrhosis, and poisonings, including drug overdoses. I thank God I never did drugs, except experimented with marijuana, or drank alcohol. I did some social drinking a little bit in my wilder days when I used to go dancing, but I never really liked alcohol. Sweet drinks, yeah, you know, like cocktails. I never really liked beer or anything like that. And the scripture tells us that wine is a mocker and strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. We find that in Proverbs 20, verse 1. You know, it says that drunkards will not inherit the kingdom of God. So it's just the grace of God that I never fell into that particular sin, you know. It was never a temptation to me. All right, so all this sounds a little too close for comfort to the story of modern Russia with its devastating vodka and drug bringing or drug benching